Welcome to the only daily podcast focusing on compliance news of the day. Each morning, start your day with a cup of coffee and Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, to hear about 4 of the top compliance, corruption, or leadership stories you will need to start your day. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.
First, a word from our sponsor. The Daily Compliance News for March 10, 2022, the 4-day notice provision. And we begin with that stories from Reuters. The SEC has proposed that listed companies spell out cyber breaches within 4 days of the breach. This would certainly be a big change, given how many companies have tried to hide the cyber breaches which have occurred over the years. Not really respecting either transparency of releasing the information and unfortunately the stakeholders whose information and personal information who's usually stolen. The vote comes as the Commission has a growing regulatory concern on how cybersecurity issues could affect markets and investors. This is really a big change and certainly antithetical to the prior SECs under the Trump administration, who was much more concerned about allowing corporations to hide information than transparency in the market. Next up, from the Wall Street Journal, Sunny Balwani, the former number 2 COO at Theranos, is going to trial. His trial begins this week. The former top deputy to Elizabeth Holmes faces charges of defrauding investors and patients about the company's blood testing startup capabilities. Certainly, he was there as the full scope of Theranos until its implosion in 2016 after a series of articles by the Wall Street Journal exposing the fraud that was at the heart of Theranos. Elizabeth Holmes tried to claim that he was abusive to her when they were in a relationship and he was controlling. Number one, she never reported that relationship to the board. And number two, she was the one that was in control. So what he knew and his participation in the fraud will be a key question going forward. Next up, from a first-time contributor to the Daily Compliance News, the Harvard Law Today has an interview with Matthew Stephenson, one of the top professors in the country on the FCPA, and he talks to them about a wide variety of topics, but of course, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and about the role corruption played. He has talked to some experts who have suggested that corruption played more of a role in the emergence of the conflict than observers have tended to appreciate. One is a wag the dog scenario for Russia, where Vladimir Putin was trying to overcome the inherent corruption. And our final story is another sad story of an African-American who was arrested for being black while banking. The director of the movie Black Panther was arrested in his own bank in Atlanta, attempting to make a withdrawal out of his account with photo ID. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network and a proud member of C-Suite Radio. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you'll join me again tomorrow.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.